Hi, I'm Chelly Wood, and this is my tiny sewing room where I make doll clothes sewing videos. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little gingham dress with bell sleeves and a scalloped edge to fit vintage blueberry muffin dolls. Before we begin, please go to my website, chellywood.com, to download and print this free PDF sewing pattern. Use the pattern to cut out all the pieces shown here. To get the gingham aligned diagonally, I cut mine on the bias like this. I recommend cutting both pieces on the bias, the outer fabric plus the lining fabric too. I'm using a light purple for my lining. That will give your gingham a sideways appearance. I'm also using pre-scalloped ribbon to make her dress look like the one that Blueberry Muffin wore in the original cartoon. But if you don't have any scalloped edge trim, I've left a link to some in the description area. Or you could just use some white rickrack, or you could just skip that edging. If you do want the scalloped edge, like you see I've been using, begin by measuring some to fit the bottom of both backs and the front. Cut the trim to fit exactly. Sandwich the trim between the gingham back and the lining fabric for your back. Stitch the three pieces together. After you finish stitching, pull back the edge of the fabric and cut off any extra scallop on each side. Then finish stitching the back closure and the neck. Clip corners and seams. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm using Fisker's Stitchers Minis. If you need a pair of those, I have them, a link to them in the description area below this video. Follow these instructions for both backs. Because of the type of scallop trim that I have used, I found it helpful to trim away all that excess bits of scallop. If you're using rickrack trim instead of this special scalloped edging, you won't need to do this. You can just wait until you're done with the entire garment and then attach the rickrack on the underside of the dress, like attach it to the bottom of your lining after you're all finished. Sandwich the trim between the gingham front and the lining front. Keep right sides together. Stitch along the bottom of the garment front. Clip the overhanging scallop bits like we did before, and I'm doing this on the front piece. And the reason I'm doing this scallop stuff is very stiff. It does not sew together easily like your rickrack would, and rickrack's a fair substitute. Stitch the gingham to the lining along the collar. I'm using the backstitch for this, and if you need help with the backstitch, I do have a tutorial which is found in the description area below this video on YouTube. Clip all seams so far, and that's what I'm doing here with my little Fisker's Stitchers. Handy tool when you're working with teeny tiny garments like this. Can't believe I used to do this with big scissors. After clipping seams for both backs and the front, invert all of your garment pieces. Now, I often use a chopstick to help me invert garment pieces. And again, if you need some chopsticks, there's a helpful link in the description area below. I like the chopsticks that have a little bit of ribbing around the very tip of them, and I give them a twist when I use them, and that kind of helps, I guess, solidify. You just want to be careful you don't poke too hard because it can go through your seams. Press all seams, including both backs and the dress's front. Lay one of the backs on top of the front, keeping outer fabrics, the ginghams, together. Stitch them together at the shoulder. Again, I use the back stitch for this. It's awfully tiny to use a sewing machine. So a link to my backstitch tutorial is found below. Follow these same directions to attach the other back piece. I'm not saying you can't use a sewing machine, but I just hate when it eats my fabric. So I'd rather stitch this. It's so tiny, it doesn't take very long. Open the garment up like this and press both shoulder seams. Turn it over so you're looking at the right side, the gingham side. Now we'll attach a sleeve. Lay the sleeve's rounded edge near the underarm area of your dress, and then backstitch from the underarm about 1/2 inch or 12 to 13 millimeters before you stop sewing, and then tie a knot. Pull the curved part of the sleeve around to the opposite side and attach it the same way to the dress. And that's tricky to understand, so I'm going to show you. So I've attached it partly, just a very small little bit of stitching. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap the sleeve around to the other underarm area and begin stitching from there in just a little bit. Okay, right there, just a little bit, not all the way to the seam. Now you'll have a tiny bit of stitching holding the sleeve in place on each side of the armhole. Okay, to show you what we should have, okay, looks like the flying nun's hat. Okay, so there's my little bit of stitching on that side, a little bit of stitching on this side, attaching the sleeve at the rounded edges, but you can see that there's a hole right where the shoulder seam has been stitched for the front and backs. Okay, I can stick my finger through that. Now we're going to gather right here. Okay, we're going to gather that. So gather the top of the sleeve until it fits into the groove of the shoulder. So to make sure you know what I mean, all right, so I'm looking now at that gap, and I want to make sure that my gathers fit nicely into that shoulder seam right there. And now I'm going to stitch to attach the rest of the gathers to the bodice and to the stitched area of the shoulder seam. Run a back stitch along the bottom of these gathers, fully attaching the sleeve to the shoulder of the garment. Here's how it looks from the inside of the garment. Now that the sleeve is attached, you want to follow the same directions to attach the other sleeve. So you might want to go back through this video, rewatch how to do that. Now your garment looks like this inside and like this on the outside. Fold the bottom of one sleeve just one time, and then a second time to create a double fold hem. Whip stitch all the way across your hem if you need help with the whip stitch. Again, I have a tutorial for the whip stitch and it's down in the description below. Hem both sleeves with a double fold hem. Here's the view from the wrong side, the underside. Fold one sleeve in half with right sides together. Okay, so here's my tiny little garment. I'm going to fold it so gingham touches gingham, and I can see that inner, the lining fabric. Okay, and I'm going to sew from my right thumb to my left thumb. Stitch from the sleeve's hem to the underarm, and then from the underarm to the bottom of the dress. Here's a closer look at my stitches. Fold the other sleeve in half with right sides facing and stitch it just like you did on the other side. Clip your seams at the underarm area on both sides of the garment. And that's what I'm doing here. You just want to lift your sleeve up so you don't accidentally clip it. Invert the garment. And again, you can use a chopstick if you need to. They're very tiny little sleeves. There we go. Add a few snaps down the back. And now you're ready to try the dress on a doll. Isn't this blueberry muffin so sweet? For more free printable PDF sewing patterns to fit dolls of many shapes and all different sizes, please remember to visit my website, chellywood.com.
What if there was an easy way to take a big doll pattern and resize it to fit a little doll, or vice versa? I'm Chelly Wood, the doll clothing designer, and in my pattern alteration class, I'm going to share with you my resizing formula.
Pattern alteration is when you take a pattern that you already own and you make changes to it. Let's say a dress doesn't fit your doll quite right. I'll show you how to create a gusset to extend the dress's bodice. Along the same lines, I'll show you how to use a doll's body measurements to lengthen and shorten shirt sleeves, and to recreate the pants patterns you already own so they will fit dolls of different shapes and sizes. Following my instructions, you'll learn how to reshape dresses and skirts, making them fuller or less full depending on the look you're going for. With this collection of more than 40 videos, you'll use my measurement guide and dozens of tips and tricks to create a full wardrobe for the doll or dolls of your choice.
I invite you to join me. We are going to have so much fun.